Welcome everyone to Stream of Bhakti Stream of Bhakti podcast pilot episode number 3. This is going to take some time getting used to here. We're
We have to
here
come up
with
with a standard intro.
well, we're here with your hosts Nitai and Ani, and this is a yoga philosophy podcast based on the ancient teachings of the text called Srimad Bhagavatam, which we are studying systematically week by week. And today we are on Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 4. How's it going, Nitai?
Pretty good. We're having a little mic issue, as you can hear. I think when you went live, I think Alex mentioned it just now too, that there's an increase in background sound. So anyway, for everyone, we're going to work on improving that. We're just talking about getting mics. But when the pandemic hit, they sold out of, everyone just went, there was an explosion of podcasts, right?
Everyone's doing podcasts.
Yeah, you can't even buy mics now in the store. Do you have like a dishwasher that just went on or something?
I do not, but there's a window open. I can go close it.
So it was difficult to actually purchase mics. We're working on it, and hopefully we'll be able to get the sound a little bit better. There's not so much background sound.
Okay, I don't know if that'll help, but here we go. Yeah, step by step, we'll do really well. We have some artwork now to launch our Facebook page and YouTube channel and all. That's made by our friend Ryan. His partner Cami comes to almost all of our events and has taken our kirtan training, and they're a wonderful family who volunteered to help us out with this. So we're excited to debut the artwork this weekend, actually. Hopefully we can go live with it by or before Monday. Yeah.
Nice.
So should we get into it?
Let's do it. Text number 4. Today we're starting to get into the storyline of the Bhagavatam, which is really interesting. And we're going to meet some of the key figures that are going to be with us through the first canto. And the first canto, we're going to get introduced to Sonaka Rishi and the sages and their questions that they're going to ask. So let's do it.
Let's do it. So
Text
starting
number
with the invocation mantras, if you're joining us for the first time today, we say these beautiful Sanskrit mantras before we start reading and discussing as a way to set an intention, basically, as you'll hear about in the translation of the verses. So first we'll start with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Narachaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatijaya Mudirayet. Translation. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So we're honoring the teachers that have brought us these texts. Nashtapraveshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto Krishna, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact.
Nice. So we've just gone through the first 3 texts in our first 2 sessions, which kind of are the prelude to the Bhagavatam. And we read the Sanskrit and quite a bit out of the purports, out of the commentary. And now we'll probably spend a little less time in the commentaries going through the string of verses. There's a couple that we might dip into. Maybe we can pause a little bit along the way because we should set the scene here. Like we might need to flesh it out a little bit, what's going on. Yep.
Whenever you want.
Let's go for it. Text 4.
So Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 4. We'll read the Sanskrit first and the translation. Naimishe nimisha kshetre rishiyah shonaka adiya sattam swargaya lokaya sahasra samam asata. Translation. Once, in a holy place in the forest of Naimisharanya, great sages, headed by the sage Shonaka, established to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees.
So they are gathering to do a sacrifice. You want to go to the paragraph that starts with the great sages are always anxious?
Absolutely.
It's like third paragraph.
The great sages are always anxious to do good to the people in general, and as the sages headed by Shaunaka and others assembled at this holy place of Naimisharanya with a program of performing a great and continuous chain of sacrificial ceremonies. I'm going to read that again. The great sages are always anxious to do good to the people in general, and as such, the sages, headed by Shaunaka and others, assembled at this holy place of Naimisharanya with a program of performing a great and continuous chain of sacrificial ceremonies.
Just to be clear, I don't know what image that conjures in someone's mind, like the sacrificial ceremonies. But these were really beautiful ceremonies that were centered around fire, having a sacred fire. And then the main thing that happens with the fire is this constant chanting of mantras. And the fire is like the centerpiece of the sacrifice. They do offer some things into the fire, like grains and nice things that they offer into it. But the idea is that the impact of doing a sacrifice like that creates an atmosphere of like auspiciousness. What's another word for that? Goodness. It's supposed to bring good fortune and good consciousness. And by having all these mantras chanted, so their idea was that if they were to continue to do this one after another, welfare, for the welfare of the people, Alex is saying. If they could continue to do this for a long time, they're saying here 1,000 years. This was 1,000 years. This is like at the beginning of Kali Yuga, right? So they wanted to do this so that the people of Kali Yuga, which is us, would get the benefit, because the Kali Yuga is a difficult age, which we're going to hear all about this more as we get into it. But that's what it means by sacrificial ceremonies here. That it's the chanting of mantras with fire, with the ceremonial fire. It's actually a beautiful thing to see. Do you want to keep going on with that paragraph?
Yeah, absolutely. Forgetful men do not know the right path for peace and prosperity. However, the sages know it well, and therefore, for the good of all men, they are always anxious to perform acts which may bring about peace in the world. They are sincere friends to all living entities, and at the risk of great personal inconvenience, they are always engaged in the service of the Lord for the good of all people. Lord Vishnu is just like a great tree, and all others, including the demigods, men, siddhas, charanas, vidyadhars, and other living entities, are like branches, twigs, and leaves of that tree. This is a mouthful here, including demigods, men, siddhas, charanas, vidyadharas, and other living entities. So in this text, we'll come across Sanskrit terminology like this quite a bit that are describing different species of life. And in this case, many of these species that are being described are actually different species of humans. But anyway, we'll mention that as we go along.
Yeah, the Bhagavatam is really far out. Like, there's going to be like, this is a cosmic book.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to encounter all kinds of very interesting people like the sages, but also different living entities that live in different parts of the universe, even is what's described in the Bhagavatam. It's really exciting to get into this.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, initially it may come across as something like super out there, that there's these interesting species of human-like beings with different capabilities, which is quite a normal thing when we're going through Bhagavatam and other Vedic texts. I mean, now we're kind of conditioned to live in such a way that you only really believe what you see and experience. So it going through these texts requires some form of submission to the idea that there is actually a lot more out there, and was actually a lot more out there than meets the eye to us today. And the way that the Bhagavatam is describing our existence in chronological order is very different from how we perceive it in our current historical and scientific teachings. For example, Nitai was mentioning this term Kali Yuga, this time. Kali Yuga is defined in this text, actually, Srimad Bhagavatam, as the current, it's the Sanskrit word for the current time period that we're living in. And there are 4 time periods described in the Bhagavatam that we'll learn about as we go along. But the Kali Yuga, one of the translations or the symptoms of this age that we're living in is actually, it could translate to something like the Dark Ages. And it's describing like the time is getting darker as we go along, whereas in our current historical teachings, the Dark Ages are something that are described that, people lived in way in the past before technological advancement. So we'll come across a lot of interesting things like this as we're reading along, and this is a really exciting thing for us too, especially me. I haven't really systematically gone through, but to learn about all these cool things that are described in the Bhagavatam is a pretty amazing thing.
I was watching Raghunath on from Wisdom of the Sages, which is our inspiration, by the way. I don't think we actually said that yet, that we kind of got inspired to do this little online reading of the Bhagavatam because of this podcast, Wisdom of the Sages. But Raghunath, he was on Joe Rogan. He was on Joe Rogan, and I watched that interview. It was a really good interview. And Joe Rogan asked him a really interesting question. He said, "So do you believe?" Because he had a question about Ganesh.
Mm-hmm.
And the question was, do you believe that that there is such a being as Ganesh? Like Joe Rogan was asking Raghunath this. The Ganesh is not such an unfamiliar figure, like in the yoga communities, right? Like you'll often go into a yoga studio and you'll see a little deity of Ganesh, or there can be. Like I think they associate Ganesh. I think Ganesh is often associated with prosperity and wealth, that kind of thing. But I want to tell you the answer that Raghunath gave, which I thought was pretty interesting. He said that when he first came in contact with the teachings of Bhakti and the culture and everything, he wasn't really thinking that this was a reality, that there are other living entities in the universe, and one of them could be Ganesh, for example. And he was thinking that these were personalities or figures or stories that we could get some benefit from hearing about, like there's some value there, but what's the need of really taking it literally? What's the need? And so when he first entered the ashram, so this was a question that he had himself in the ashram. And one of the teachers in the ashram, he said to him, he put it to him like that, like, do we really need to think that all of this there's a reality to any of this? Like, can't we just take the lessons from it and just move on? And so his teacher in the ashram said to him, but he said it in a very gentle way with affection. It wasn't like in a chastising way or anything. He just said, what do you know? And it hit Raghunath, like, yeah, what do I know? Like, what do we know, really? What do we know? Like we're so convinced perhaps about what we think we know, but what we know about the universe, and if we really think about how we know about it, like through our own mind and senses, and the possibilities that are like what the different realities are in this universe, we're not really aware of it all. And so Raghunath decided from that point on to kind of approach the knowledge in that way. Well, what do I really know? Like, how much do I really know about the universe? I think this is a topic that will come up because the Bhagavatam challenges our understanding of our current, like, common understanding of the universe, the globe, the way that the universe is situated, the cause of things, the cause of creation, like the forces of nature. All of these things are going to be greatly challenged in the Bhagavatam. So here, the sentence that you just read, the siddhas, the charnas, the vividharas, I mean, these are actually describing, in the Bhagavatam, says that there are other living entities, other dimensions in the universe that we can't perceive in a human form, and there are other entities that live in those dimensions and can interact with humanity when they desire to. And there's also description of activities going on in different planets. Mm-hmm. So it's like, whoa. And it's fun, actually. It's fun to get into that. And even if someone's listening to this and doesn't want to take it literally, that's okay. Because there are actually valuable, powerful teachings that are involved in the whole thing. But just keep that in the back of the mind. What do we really know? And what do we really know will be challenged more as we get into the pages of the Bhagavatam. I think that question will become more relevant as we keep going.
So to be clear, we're not conspiracy theorists. And we're not making suggestions about aliens, but we are making suggestions about aliens. It's cool, actually. I mean, even just sort of watching news articles that come out daily, like, I'm just now thinking about this, that the things that we see and perceive on, especially things like social media, which we're on all the time, like, it gets stuck in the subconscious, which is a pretty amazing thing. Like, you may not stop and think about it, but really, like, all these things. Okay, so to bring some context to this, like, for the last several days, almost daily, I see some kind of like a BBC link or a CNN link or something about maybe a planet that may be inhabitable, a planet that maybe there's water on, a planet that, and I don't really stop and think about it a lot, but now that we're talking about this, it's coming up in my mind that actually, like, although our reality in a way is defined in a box, but at the same time, like, if we're really paying attention to discoveries and potential discoveries that are being made, like, this question is answered, really. Like, we don't really know anything. Like, so much is being discovered on a regular basis that we may or may not pay attention to. And also the context of, what is being advertised and told to us. Anyway, no conspiracy theory, just Bhagavatam.
Yeah. Let's do it. There are billions and billions of stars and planets, right? And here we are, and we've got our meager instruments to try to understand a vast universe. Mm-hmm. So we should be open to, hearing something that's, different. Yeah. So.
Okay, shall we read on?
Yep, text 5.
Oh, you didn't want to finish that paragraph?
I think we should, because we spent a little longer there, and I thought I really want to get to the first question if we can.
Which verse is the first question?
Just 9.
So I have a time marker. 9.
Yeah. Text 9.
Good luck with that. Okay. Text 1.5. Ta ekadatu munayah pratar huta hutagyah Satkritam sutam asinam paprachur idam adarat. One day, after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seat of esteem to Srila Sutta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters.
This is the sacrificial fire they're talking about. Actually, they would often light the fires early in the morning, and this is still done in you can still see this done in ashrams, and not so much in maybe Canada, but I was in an ashram in India in Mayapur where they were lighting these fires in the morning. It's so beautiful. They have this, and it's a very well constructed fire. It's very beautifully, like there's a whole kind of kund, a yagya kund, right? Like there's a decorations that are all set up around the fire, and sometimes with a mandala or something, and then there's these beautiful mantras that are chanted as the fire is ignited and as it burns. Really beautiful to see as the sun is rising. Really nice way to start the day.
Yeah, I think in the future it would be cool to have some supplementary photos or videos to bring context to
That's a good idea.
like this. Yeah,
it's a really good idea.
You know, as you're even talking about it, I'm thinking like, what is a person really picturing? There's a fire pit.
Well, think about it. You know, like how many of us would get up in the morning and light a fire outside? Like we just don't do that. Right?
Yeah.
But I mean, but there's something very calming and peaceful about a fire, like a contained, purposeful fire. You know, like the idea of sitting around a campfire is quite nice for many of us who have that kind of memory, right? But to start that every day, to be there and start the day with a fire before the sun rises, and to be chanting sacred mantras at that time, what would that do to your mind for the rest of the day?
Also thinking about where these people are coming from, like the campfire example, we may light a fire for our own enjoyment, but what's being described here is these people are purposely having these beautiful fire ceremonies for the benefit of all living beings.
Yeah.
And to do that every day with consciousness, like what kind of intention or beauty is being set for our day. I mean, not to minimize, but you know, I guess a relatable example in today's day, and especially in North America, is many places like yoga studios where sage is burned, like to help the atmosphere. That's a very sort of minute example of something much greater that's happening here. They're talking about doing this for 1,000 years.
Well, this was kind of on the verge of two yugas, which we'll learn about as we go. The fire yagya was something kind of the past. And this is kind of the last.
Yagya is the Sanskrit word for the fire sacrifices.
Yeah, good catch there. Yeah, so the fire ceremonies, they were kind of replaced in Kali Yuga with a different kind of yagya, or a different kind of ceremony or sacrifice, you could say. And it's also best done in the morning, early in the morning. And we'll talk about that later. What that is.
Yeah, I think it comes up in these verses. Did you want to read some of this purport or go to the next?
We'll go to text 6.
Okay. Anyway, I'm sure we'll come back to it in the future, but the first paragraph of this purport talking about who authorized teachers are is a very important subject as well for later.
You can read some if you want.
Well, I mean, okay, we'll mention it and we'll drop a pin in it.
Okay.
Morning is the best time to hold spiritual services, as we discussed. The great sages offered the speaker of the Bhagavatam an elevated seat of respect called the Vyas Asana, or the seat of Srila Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva is the original preceptor of all men. And all other preceptors, am I saying that right? Preceptors?
Yeah.
And all other preceptors are considered to be his representatives. A representative is one who can exactly present the viewpoint of Sri Vyasadeva. Sri Vyasadeva impregnated the message of Bhagavatam unto Srila Shukadeva Goswami, and Srila Sutta Goswami heard it from Srila Shukadeva Goswami. All bona fide representatives of Srila Vyasadeva in the chain of disciplic succession are to be understood to be Goswamis. So this word Goswami is explained now. These Goswamis restrain all their senses and they stick to the path made by the previous acharyas. So go literally means senses and Swami means master. So Goswami, if you're hearing Shukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, any Goswami that's being heard of in these sacred texts, or if you come across a Goswami, this is what that means, is a person who has been able to restrain the wildness of the senses, master of the senses. The Goswamis do not deliver lectures on the Bhagavatam capriciously. Rather, they execute their services most carefully, following their predecessors who delivered the spiritual message unbroken to them.
Goswami is just, we should note, can be either men or women. And as we said previously, we won't, that's not the point here, but we will, we just have to kind of accept the way that like the English is used here, where it's always going to use he and man and that kind of thing, because it's the way that English was used at the time when Prabhupada wrote this. So
I didn't even pick up on that this time. Where was
that's
it?
okay. I don't think we should go. You mean like correct the pronouns?
Yeah.
That would be laborsome to get into that going through the whole book. I think we have to accept it as like, like say like Shakespeare. Shakespeare's like, it's a masterpiece, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is using English. It's a masterpiece in a certain way, the way that he wrote. And so you would like, it was English used in that time, and it doesn't kind of like, he wouldn't go and make it into English of today. It would lose some of its charm, right? It would lose some of its maybe even message. So we just have to take it that this is kind of a masterpiece like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that although we will, encounter the English being used slightly differently than is conventionally used today in modern times, then we just have to kind of get over that. And maybe once in a while we'll make a note of it in case there's somebody new jumping on and they haven't heard that.
Okay.
But I think the point you wanted to make a mark in here was that there is a particular qualification that goes along with like representing the Bhagavatam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That actually comes out more in the next verses. This is that's like the introduction to the idea, and the exact qualifications are about to be revealed.
All right, text 1.6, Sanskrit again. Rishya uchu tvaya khalu puranani setihasani chanagaha akhyatanyapya dhitani dharmashastrani yanyutaha. I'm not used to this actually. In Sanskrit, like it's quite a nice exercise, but really have to slow it down here.
I'm glad you're doing it.
The sages said, "Respected Shuta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and the histories as well, for you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them." Okay, I see what you're saying, guys, going deeper into the subject.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One of the first things is that he's completely freed from vice. He's well versed, means that he has taken the time to deeply study the teachings. Well versed refers to like he's exposed himself to a variety, to the whole spectrum of Vedic teachings. You can go on. It continues like this in text 7.
Yani Veda Vidam Shreshto Bhagavan Badarayanaha Anyacha Munaya Sutta Paravara Vido Vidu. This is, as I was just reading that, I was thinking about our little discussion there about chanting the mantras and these sacrificial fires for the benefit of all humankind. Like, this is literally what we're doing now when we're chanting these Sanskrit mantras.
Yes, yes. That's the Bhagavatam. I guess the difference would be, and I'm glad you bring this up. I was trying to think about how to draw attention to the quality of human beings that they were, and how like rare it was, that how rare it is to find. Like, we're reading from the Bhagavatam, but what they were doing was that they pretty much dedicated their life. They put aside everything else. They had nothing else to do. They only wanted to dedicate their lives fully for the benefit of humanity, to help humanity develop spiritually. And they had no other engagement. So such human beings are rare to find, right? They're very, very rare. And here was a whole kind of like collection of them. And of the collection of these rare human beings, these Goswamis, then Sutta Goswami in particular is very special. Have we kind of like, is it, there's a lot of names here, right? So just to recap, there's a large thing happening, like a bunch of sages, these very qualified human beings. They get together and they're doing this yajna because they can understand, they're doing this ceremony because they can understand that the atmosphere of the world is about to become heavier. That's Kali Yuga. It means things are starting to get heavier. Interactions between people are becoming more strained. In previous ages, it wasn't so. So they set out to do these chanting of mantras and ceremonies. And one day they encounter, one person joins their circle, and his name is Sutta Goswami. He is one of the key people in this group of sages, and they're about to ask him questions. So they're diverting their attention. I think there's a little storyline is needed here because we were talking about different tangent things, right? So they're about to turn their attention away from their fires. They have someone tending the fire and everything. All of their energy has been going into chanting these mantras and going through these ceremonies. Now what they're doing is they're kind of stepping back from their chanting of the mantras and the fires, to focus their attention on this one particular Goswami who has come into their midst, and his name is Sutta Goswami. And he has very special qualifications, and they know that. And so they're going to now, instead of focusing on all of their chanting of mantras, they're going to focus on hearing from him. They want to know specific things from him that are going to benefit humanity. So that's the questions that are coming up.
Since we just recapped, I'm just going to quickly read the translation of the last couple again. These
Sure.
are the qualities of this great personality that are coming up.
Okay.
Respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures, famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and the histories as well. For you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. This is going through his quality nows. Now we just read 1.7.
You did the Sanskrit, but not English.
Yeah, so the qualities go on. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead, and you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge.
So he's like the, what's the name of the guy in, what's the name of the big wizard in the Harry Potter movie?
Albus Dumbledore.
Yeah,
Albus Percival Aberforth Dumbledore. Anyway.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. You gave me an opportunity, okay?
So he's like that, right? He's like, he's when he walks in the room, everyone's like, okay, he's here. and now they want to hear from him. And his, aside from his personal qualities, he's also heard from Srila Vyasadeva, who is an avatar, who is the original compiler of all Vedic knowledge. So to have been in the company of Srila Vyasadeva is a big thing, it's a big deal. And he also has associated with all kinds of great personalities, all kinds of other great sages. So imagine Dumbledore, like, having some, some colleagues spread around the world who are very, very powerful, just like him, and so there's a circle of them. There's a circle of them that are particularly powerful and wise, and so that's kind of his status. He's very known for his deep wisdom and his deep powerful knowledge, his transformative knowledge that he can share. So when he comes there, they're kind of like, okay, let's just put everything on pause and spend time with him for a little bit, since he's in our midst now.
This is, it's also very cool how this is pointed out as a very esteemed quality, that you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge, drawing attention to the type of company that a person can keep, which may elevate or bring down a person's consciousness. Like, this is talking about a person who's maintaining company of people who are at the highest level of consciousness possible.
Mm-hmm. They're very, very highly spiritually developed, very, very enlightened souls, as we'll see too as this goes on.
Yeah. So, any of this commentary or next verse?
I think we'll go on to text 8, unless something catches your eye. Oh, well, there is one little thing here. I'll just read it.
Yeah.
Besides Vyasadeva, there are other sages who are the authors of 6 different philosophical systems, namely Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Patanjali, Jaimini, and Ashtavakra. Theism is explained completely in the Vedanta Sutra. So this is kind of separating Bhakti as one of the schools, coming from Vyasadeva. There are other schools that are present in the Vedas, such as Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Patanjali, of course, is quite famous currently. The others probably not so much. So Sutta Goswami was versed in all of these philosophies. And
we just went through, continue.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
We just went through a module of, so if you may or may not know, Nitai and I are part of an organization called Kirtan Vancouver, where we offer Kirtan sessions around Vancouver, as the name suggests. And we offer Kirtan trainings. And in the last module of the online Kirtan training, over the course of 8 classes, Nitai explained in a lot of detail what Bhakti actually is. And I just want to bring attention to that here, and reading this sentence again. There are 6 different philosophical systems with all their names, and then it says theism is explained completely in the Vedanta Sutras, whereas in other systems of philosophical speculations, practically no mention is given to the ultimate cause of all causes. So separating and defining Bhakti, like our podcast literally called Stream of Bhakti, we're going to be obviously going into the subject of Bhakti a lot. And if you're listening from a yoga philosophy perspective and want to learn about Bhakti, then this teaching here, this text, Srimad Bhagavatam, is extremely important, because the other yoga texts don't really talk about Bhakti.
Yeah, good point.
It's like a buzzword, many yoga buzzwords. Bhakti is now becoming a buzzword as well, but it's curious to see whether people using that word are actually fully understanding what the context of that is, or is it just a cool word?
Yeah. And Bhakti actually can be present in these other yoga philosophies and systems. Excuse me, I'm sorry. In fact, it is present, but it's just not the focal point of the teachings. I've got my own mason jar right. Yeah, so like you're saying, like bhakti is an integral part of yoga. Whatever yoga is there, but our attention, our consciousness may not be brought to understand where bhakti is present in that system of yoga. And that's certainly not the goal of the other schools of thought. They have other achievements that they're striving for. But in bhakti is to understand basically the bhakti is that feature that makes the yoga system work, that allows a yogi to go from one stage to the next stage to the next stage. So by appreciating bhakti at a deep level, you can see how it's present in actually all the different yoga ways that yoga is applied, and the schools of thought in the Vedas. The yoga instructors may have come across a book called the Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutras are kind of a summary of Vedic knowledge, and this book that we're reading now, the Bhagavatam, is Vyasadev's commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So Vyasadeva is the author of the Vedanta Sutra, and this is his commentary on it. So the Vedanta Sutra is supposed to be like the essence of all Vedic or yogic knowledge. And so he's elaborating now. The whole Bhagavatam is about the essence of yoga, basically. Sorry, I was joking there. We've only got 2 more texts to go before we get to the question.
Okay. Text 1.8. Vetatvam somya tat sarvam tatvatas tad anugrahat bruyuhu snigdhasya shishyasya guravo guyam api yuta. Translation. And because you are, so going further along the qualities of Srila Sutta Goswami, we just said about how the knowledge that he's acquainted with and the people that he's around, and now they're saying, and because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. So this is also a super important and simple and profound thing that's being pointed out here, is that one of the best qualities of a teacher that they're pointing out is being a good student.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When do we hear about this? We don't really. One of the best qualities is because you were such an amazing student, now you are such an amazing teacher.
So the other thing is what is that makes one an amazing student? Like we have a what is considered knowledge in the Bhagavatam is different than what we conceive of knowledge of in the modern day. Like we would say, for example, I'm going to school, right? So I'm taking all these classes, and presumably I'm gaining knowledge, right? And so then at the end I get a degree which represents the knowledge that I've learned, and then I can be some kind of authority of knowledge, represent an authority of knowledge, and work in a field of knowledge. But knowledge in the Vedic context and the yogic context is reflected more through behavior. And the knowledge that we gain in the modern world in the context of the Vedas is information. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's like there's a difference between knowledge and information. That's the point. And just because one gets information doesn't mean they're very knowledgeable. Knowledgeable in terms of the Vedas is something that's reflected through behavior. So because he is humble, they can understand he has knowledge. It's not because he can say a bunch of stuff and elaborate on a bunch of philosophy, or all it's because of his behavior. Knowledge equals experience, as Alex is
So
saying.
not just talking the talk, but actually walking the walk.
Yeah, and a person, but whereas like in the modern day, say for example, I can get my degree in social work, but there'll be very little accountability for my behavior. There's some professionalism that's required to work in the field, but whether I'm humble or not, or whether there's so many features of my own personal behavior that aren't really accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really relevant to the assessment of my knowledge. So, is this a bit of too much of a tangent, or?
No, I'm actually quite inspired by this topic. I'm remembering an anecdote that I heard when I was younger about this a parent who took their child to a doctor, and this is now becoming more relevant now that I'm a parent. Parent takes the child to the doctor because they're worried about the sugar intake of the child for teeth and bodily functions and stuff. So trying to use the doctor as a medium to tell this child that, yeah, no, too much sugar consumption is not good. And the doctor says, well, come back tomorrow. And then they go back the next day. He didn't tell the child that. And then they go back the next day or a while later or whatever. And now the doctor is ready to say, okay, too much sugar consumption is not good. You should reduce your consumption. And then the parents asking this doctor, well, why couldn't you have just told my child that the other day? Why did we have to wait? And he said, well, I can't tell somebody else to do something, a patient to do something that I'm not really following myself. And this is like a fairy tale. Who would ever say that? Well, yeah, I'm a doctor and I can't really tell you to do this because I'm not doing this myself. This like that just doesn't even exist. Like you're saying about the level of accountability is so limited. I'm so glad that you actually defined the difference between information and knowledge. I didn't really think about it in that way.
Yeah, so we kind of like live in a world where information is considered to be knowledge, and people are considered to be wise if they have information. But it's a completely different standard than what's in the Vedas. There's no attribute of knowledge or wisdom given to somebody without having like certain qualities manifest in their character. Those qualities manifest because of real knowledge in the heart, and they cause a person to behave in a certain way. And this is yoga. That's real. That's a yogi. A yogi can be identified by behavior, not so much by the information. I guess we could equate this to a yogi. Like the asanas that one could learn in a yoga class are also kind of like information. Like one can learn how to do it by gaining the information and practicing that information. But until the qualities actually develop within the heart, one wouldn't really be considered a yogi. Right?
Do we even like, I mean, it's again, such a simple, but such a profound thing. Like, we can easily throw around a word like yogi. This is a yogi, I'm a yogi, that's a yogi. But what does that really mean? And it's because the priority of the society that we're living in is extremely, extremely different from what we're reading about. These people who have dedicated their lives for the benefit of mankind versus now the definition of success is actually money in a capitalistic society.
Yeah. And within that, we've got like all of us spirit souls trying to find meaning and purpose. And therefore yoga does actually provide an entryway. Even the physical yoga, like so we're talking about the high end here, right? Like Sutta Goswami, he's recognized, he's renowned, he's famous because of having so many qualities of which have made him very powerful, but he's at the same time very, very humble. But Yeah, the yoga system, because of what it is, the yoga system is a system that does awaken these things in the heart for someone who's sincere. Um, and anyone who tries is a yogi to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But then the degree of success really depends on how we're going to apply the yoga. That's the beauty of the Bhagavatam. Like by taking the teachings of the Bhagavatam and applying it to our yoga life, then we can become real genuine yogis in the way that it's meant to be. Like
Yeah.
of course, our main form of yoga is kirtan.
Yeah.
So same with kirtan. I mean, like I think that we may end up instead of referring more to like the yoga asanas and things like that, like the kirtan. This applies to those who want to like chant for themselves or for others too, right? Like a real kirtan leader, a real yogi, is a kirtan leader who's really striving to awaken these qualities within their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that yogi, when that kirtan leader or does that, that's real yoga. I don't know. Kind of
Well,
strange.
yeah, it's definitely a process.
Yeah.
Being on the process is also part of the journey. Um, I just wanted to draw attention to intention and consciousness behind it as well.
Yeah.
I don't think if the goal or definition of yogi was the yogic perfection, we could go through lifetimes
Yeah.
without reaching that goal. But the fact that we enter into the definition of being student of yoga, I mean, there's got to be some authenticity there, is my point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if one is going to teach.
Yeah.
And that's the point here, because he is now going to teach them, or they're asking him to, and the reason is because of all his qualities. Okay, we're there.
So,
The first question, the first of 6 questions.
drum roll, please. Text 1.9. Tatra tatragya sayusman bhavata yad vinishchitam pumsham pumsam ekanatha shreyas tannaha shamsitum arhasi. Please, therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us in an easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general.
Question number 1, because it's like he's so experienced. He's had such opportunity to hear from realized sages, like enlightened people. He's very experienced in life. He's traveled everywhere. He's studied very deeply all the spiritual teachings. And all of this is culminated in his gentle qualities, such as humility, so that they can understand that he has genuine realization. Like he is someone who has had so much experience and has put it into a place that has caused his heart to soften and become filled with knowledge. So, considering everything you've heard, everything you've done, everywhere you've been, tell us what you think is the ultimate good for everybody. What is the best thing that's going to be the most beneficial thing for everybody in the world? This might seem like a vague question, but the thing is that it's more specific if you think about who it is that we're talking about. He wasn't just kind of traveling around the world for his and having these kinds of meetings with people by chance, or because he was looking for, like I might travel the world because I want to see what it's like in somewhere. I might want to go to England just to check it out. You know what I mean? Like just to meet some people or no, he was actually constantly on the move for the express purpose of trying to find the most concentrated and powerful spiritual knowledge that would benefit the world. That was his modus operandus. That was his like complete purpose in life. So asking him this question is very meaningful because this is what he's been doing his whole life. So what have you figured out, oh great yogi? What is the best process or best thing that can benefit people?
So we're not going to answer it in this class, are we?
Well, the
In
Bhagavatam
today's
is,
podcast.
but yeah, he's going to ask 6 questions, right?
Okay.
And then he will answer the 6 questions, and in the course of 12 cantos.
12 cantos. So we will hear the answer in 10 years from now.
Well, I mean, we'll
No,
get the
not
idea. We'll get the idea much before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the nice thing is questions are being asked and answered the whole time as we're going along. But at the same time, it's understood over the vast culmination of the 12 cantos. This is exciting. Episode 3, pilot episode 3. Now we have so many more episodes to go of fun discussions, cliffhangers, watching me fumble Sanskrit verses.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we bring today's to an end?
Yeah, thanks, honey. That was good. Look forward to the next one, and I'm looking forward to the kirtan this Sunday too. If anybody wants to join us on Facebook, Instagram,
Facebook.com/Kirtan Vancouver.
Yeah.
Or Instagram Kirtan Vancouver. Join us for another practice of yoga known as mantra meditation or kirtan.
Yeah.
So this weekend we're going to try to get our channels live on Facebook and YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Oh yeah, that reminds me, we have to look into Spotify as well. But please spread the word for next week. Next week is not going to be a pilot episode. It'll be the first official live public episode of Stream of Bhakti. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Pilot, and we'll see you next week.